G'day everyone, I'm AzureBlaze, and at the time of recording it has been almost a month already since the release of the Switch 2 and Mario Kart World. And by this time, I have played all the main tracks and tried out most of the other modes in the game. Therefore, I decided I may as well talk about my thoughts on it. Let's jump into it. The first thing I want to discuss is the controls, and that's because it doesn't feel as if there's much difference between it and 8, which is fine, because 8 controls great anyway, and I mean there probably is a little bit of a difference, however I can't feel that much. However, there is some new moves that you can pull off. The wall driving and the grinding, it's all good, it's great. I think it's a good addition and it controls really well. However, I do struggle a bit with the charge jump, and it's because it feels like if you happen to be pushing the stick even the slightest amount left or right when you're trying to do it, you end up drifting instead of charging, which is kind of frustrating, and it kind of makes me wish the charge jump was on a separate button or something. Otherwise, however, the game control is really good. I don't feel as if there's anything else I have to nitpick with it. It simply controls really well. When it comes to visuals, however, I think my opinion may come down to preference on this one. As overall, I think the game looks pretty good. It looks great. All the textures are fairly clean and higher resolution with lots of detail. For the most part, there are some fun areas where you look at the ground and it's a bit blurry and flat. However, for the most part, it's pretty good. And that goes for the world and the models as well. They have loads of personality with amazing new expressive animations and even slight to large redesigns in some cases. Then there's the costumes, which are great as well, despite the lack of them for some characters. The frame rate is buttery smooth as well, which really adds to the experience. However, I think this is where the preference side of things come in. It is fairly minor. However, in my personal opinion, I'm not much of a fan of the color palette in this game, when compared to 8 or something. Something about the colors to me feel probably more vibrant, to be fair, than previously has been. However, the color palette itself seems almost a little bit washed out. It's a bit strange. It feels as if there's almost a brown or gritty overlay applied to everything, or even some sort of haze. I'm not exactly sure how to explain it. It may only be me as well, or even how the lighting and extra detail work together in the game. I don't know, and I've not personally heard anyone else say anything about it, therefore yeah, I don't know. It's simply how I feel about it. Something about it doesn't look right to me. I'm not sure what it is though. And then the music, I mean, I have talked many times about how I'm not musically inclined and never know what to say about it other than it's good or bad or meh. However, I feel I at least must say for this game, the soundtrack is amazing. I spent a load of time listening to Mario Kart 8's soundtrack in the past, and I think I may have this in the background as well in the future. I cannot wait until the tracks are released on Nintendo Music. It is a little bit of a shame that there is no radio option. I say a little bit, it's really a shame that there's no radio option when in free roam to at the very least see the name of the songs that are playing, let alone being able to select one to play. I think that's kind of upsetting and something I would like to see added in the future. Speaking of the open world, it is perhaps the biggest part of the package, and to be honest, I mean, it's fine. I'm not gonna say it's overly fleshed out, and it can even feel fairly empty and void of stuff to do in some areas. However, I think my biggest issue is, personally, I do not feel as if there's enough incentive to interact with what content there is in the open world. There is stickers to unlock, and I think mirror mode is unlocked through some of the missions as well. However, I think something like an adventure mode or lore you can collect about different areas of the world, with Island Flyover and Wii Sports Resort, would keep me interested in doing stuff in free roam. Otherwise, yeah, there's not much else to do, personally. Although there's stuff to do that's spread out around the world. However, I feel like I have no reason to get and do that sort of stuff. That is my thoughts on free roam. However, there are some other modes in the game. However, before that, I would like to talk about the menus and the costumes, and especially the menus. However, the costumes first, because they are great, and as I alluded to them earlier, they look really nice. And unlocking them by finding food bags around the world when either racing or in free roam, it's fine enough. However, the inconsistency of the amount of costumes is a little bit confusing. Why does Donkey Kong have one costume? It's really strange where Mario and Luigi have loads. I have no clue. It is really strange, and I'm hoping more come in the future. And like obtaining the extra NPC characters solely through the chemical item is somewhat frustrating. Like I like it as a fun extra way to obtain them. However, I think it would have been really neat to have to like find the characters in different parts of the world and then like race or battle them or something to unlock them. Like it would have been an easy way to add more value to the world, and it would have made getting the characters much more, I guess, eventful or nice or something like that. Like imagine going to Moo Moo Meadows and that's where you have to like race the cow or something like that. I think that would have been neat. Although I think the cow might be unlocked straight away. I'm not 100% sure on that. I can't remember. Yeah, I think that would have been a nice way to do sort of things. And then when discussing the menus, I really do not like how the characters and vehicles are displayed. The rest of the menus are fine, and like most of them are the same as Mario Kart 8's, which is fine. However, the character selection seems to follow like the current trend in modern day games to have the selections in boxes that scroll horizontally. And if people know me and have watched previous things or listened to the podcast or stuff like that, I complain about this trend a lot. I really don't like it. Like it means you can't see as many characters as you can in like a list or a big grid that is similar to like Mario Kart 8 or something, and you have to scroll more to find what you want. And controllers are much more unintuitive going left and right in a menu than they are going up and down. It's always been sort of how it is. It's kind of really frustrating, and I do not like it at all. There is more characters, to be fair, which could explain why they wanted to do it. However, I think like a scrolling down, like a grid like Mario Kart 8 that then like scrolls down in pages as opposed to left and right, I think that would have worked better personally. And then the other big issue is how the costumes are sorted in the menu. Like I don't mind the option to have the costumes appear next to the characters or like separately. However, having no way to shrink them like down, or like shrink the entire roster down, or simply group the costumes together with the one character, like with color variants in Mario Kart 8 or with like echoes in Smash Brothers, it's baffling to me that that's not an option. Like it's part of the main problem. Like I will talk about this later. How there's like this main big problem with this game, and that's part of it. Like it's baffling to me that there's no way to be able to shrink this down, because it's such like a clunky system trying to find what you want going left and right. I don't know. It's anyway, moving back to the other modes, however, we have the standard Grand Prix, versus races, battle mode, and the brand new knockout tour. Versus races are good and probably the best way to play this game in some ways, if someone wants to simply play the game normally like another Mario Kart game. Grand Prix is pretty standard for the most part. However, there is no way to turn off what is now being called intermission tracks, where like you'll race between the main tracks. These can be rather empty and void of like many turns, which can sometimes make them feel a little bit slow to get through, especially on lower speeds. Then like tracks after that, like the tracks that you go to are limited to one go around, like one lap or something, which is, I don't know, it's kind of upsetting, not gonna lie. And again, like if there was an option to simply turn it off, it'd be fine. However, like having no way to turn it off is pretty silly in my opinion. Then there's like battle mode, and to be honest, I don't have much to say about it. I was already fairly disappointed before the game even came out that all that was returning was balloon battle and coin runners, especially after the amount of modes in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. And in my opinion, some of the maps in battle mode are like way too big as well. Some of them are okay, however, yeah, some of them are way too big. It sort of slows down the pace of the match, and there's not much customizing you can do with the battle mode either. And finally, there is what I consider to be the standout mode of this game, Knockout Tour, and I really enjoyed this mode. It is essentially an elimination mode, similar to like, I guess, F-Zero 99 with less players, where like each lap the player must be in a like above or in a position in a specific area, like a specific place to continue with the race. It involves like racing from one point to another on the map, passing through different tracks on the way, and this really invokes the feeling of like a rally mode, or like some sort of mode like from games like Dirt, which I really enjoy. I like Dirt. And it's by far where the intermission tracks shine the best. The combination of the entire race being like one long track and everyone trying to keep their places really helps add more excitement to them. This mode always causes this like tension while the player like frantically tries to stay in in like the position that they need to be, which brings a great amount of fun to this mode. I honestly think it's great and one of the best modes in modern Mario Kart. I think it's really good. I guess that leaves one last thing to discuss: the tracks themselves. And they're pretty good. I wouldn't say they have quite a consistent high bar like with 8 space courses. However, I feel that is expected due to them being designed to work with the open world as well. They are quite fun, both new and old tracks. With the retro tracks, I think Moo Moo Meadows is always a good time. A bit strange how they brought that back, considering 8 already had a remake of Moo Moo Meadows. Yeah, it is a bit strange. However, the long-awaited remake, or long-awaited by me at least, of Toad's Factory is great, with I think the only downside really being that there's no like crates to avoid on the different conveyors, which is kind of upsetting. And another one like that I've been waiting for a little while is a remake of Shy Guy Bazaar, and it's here, and it's great. I like it a lot. However, with the new tracks, for me the standouts are definitely like the new Bowser's Castle, and what is probably my like now favorite Rainbow Road. They're both like really wild stages with loads of spectacle and new ideas, and they're simply really fun to go through. Therefore, yeah, one quick thing I sort of want to note, however, before I move on from the tracks is, why is Choco Mountain considered Choco Mountain? Like, it's really different. it's almost not the same track. I think the layout may be the same, generally. However, you don't really go up like a massive mountain or anything, and the Choco part is much more, like, I mean, it's there, it's not as, like, there's not as much as is in other versions of the track. It's a bit strange. And it's another thing, one that was brought back in like the Booster Course Pass and stuff like that in Mario Kart 8. Otherwise, however, this sort of leads me back to the point which I've been alluding to throughout this video, the biggest problem this game has. And it's something that Nintendo has been a bit worse with in most cases compared to other companies. Not all, however, like, most of the cases, like most games and stuff like that, they don't really feature a lot of it. And it's something that's becoming more apparent as their games increase in scope, and that is simply the lack of options. A lot of problems and by what I've heard, many other people have with this game, could be solved by the simple addition of some more options. Things like turning off the intermission tracks for Grand Prix and online mode, grouping each character's costumes, or something as simple as choosing the music when exploring. It's options like this that would simply add to the experience of the game and leave a better impression overall, and remove a lot of frustration from people who want to play the game, then get in there and then have all these different elements that they're not the biggest fan of that can simply be turned off, because there's no reason to not have them be turned offable, even if that's not a word. Yeah, I don't know, it's frustrating. And I'm not going to go over too much about whether it's worth the price or not. I'm simply going to say that I don't really think it is worth the price. However, knowing Nintendo, they're not going to lower it anyway. Therefore, if someone is looking at actually wanting to get it, they may as well, because like, I don't think it's going to go down in price. Ultimately, it is subjective at the end of the day. It is kind of frustrating, however, like, that being Nintendo. However, I believe that is where my thoughts on the game are sort of at. I do generally, I like the game well enough. It's a Mario Kart game, it's good, like, every Mario Kart game is good. However, there's a lot of small nitpicks that almost make it feel like it has like a step forward in some areas from Mario Kart 8, and then another step back in another area, and I don't know, it seems to like, it's simply missing stuff that I feel like should probably be there, and like, there's, as I said, like more things for the open world or more options and stuff like that. I don't know, it's a little bit, I don't know. Otherwise though, it is a fairly good game, and I've been enjoying my time with it. It is nice to have new tracks to race on and a new game to play overall. That is simply a nice new thing, and it sort of takes more advantage of the Switch 2 compared to like what would be on the Switch 1, and that's been nice to see as well. Otherwise though, yeah, I believe that is all from me. I hope everybody enjoyed. Thank you for watching, and I shall be back in the next one. Cheers everyone.